I live down in the alley, full of canned heat as I can be, honey as I can be. Oh my baby, I live down in the alley, full of canned heat as I can be.
All right, guys, by an overwhelming margin, it sounds like I'm changing the motor out. So here's the motor. Same thing, it's a 250 Polaris. Nothing special. It's been rebuilt, it's ready to go. So if somebody wants to come over and switch it out for me, that'd be great. Anyway, this quad is just the way it was when I dragged it home. Didn't clean it up any, just left it be. Really no point. Clean it up later after when I get all the grease and grime off it after I'm finished installing the motor. So there's a lot of stuff to do, so let's start with getting it up on the lift. This lift is just a standard snowmobile lift with an addition on the front where I mounted a winch. So, and I'll tell you what, I'm just about too old to be crawling around on my hands and knees fixing stuff, so up on the winch it goes. Yeah, I think I can safely say that battery's a little bit lame, but I just have it kicking around just for one purpose, but it's I think it's pretty well finished its purpose. That's one of those cheapo 3,000 pound winches, which I think is actually a 1,500 pound winch, but when they actually give you the pulley with it, so they call it a 3,000 pound winch because they give you a pulley, so you multiply your 15 times the pulley ratio and then you get 3,000, right? So anyway, so that's what we got. Of course, a lot of people recognize this. You Dizzy 69, yeah, we'll get you back going again, buddy. Don't worry about it. So yeah, this unit's usually a lot cleaner and a lot nicer done up than this. But you know, we usually leave our cleaning for the end of the day after we're done riding. But the end of the day was just drag the thing back. So as you can see, here, what do you guys think about this? Does that seem like a lot of compression to you? Here, come along for the ride. Yeah, I don't think so. I did stick a gauge in there. It's tough to get up underneath. I'll have to pull the tank and fenders and seat and everything else off in the back panels. But looked like I had about 30 pounds, maybe 40 psi compression. Not quite enough. Not quite enough, even if there was a decompression switch on the motor. Well, sometimes you can work for a half hour and not move anywhere. Yeah, this is the problem. This quad is 1980, I can't remember if it's 84 or 86. Let's just say 86. So the problem is a lot of the bolts are seized in the nuts, and the nuts are encapsulated in plastic. So what ends up happening is you try to pull the bolt out and you just twist the nut around inside the plastic. So what do you do after that? Well, you get your little hacksaw and you start cutting, because if it won't come out, it just simply won't come out. Yeah, I guess, you know, maybe somebody's gonna say, well, get your Sawzall out. Yeah, well, if I puncture that tank with the end of my Sawzall, it's just not worth it, right? So this is the one from the other side. Usually, you know, one will come out and that'll give you hope, right? That everything is going to be just fine. But yeah, not so much. So let's get that off. See if we can get the tank off at least tonight before I call it quits. And go in and make some dinner. And yeah, like I say, sometimes you eat the bear, and sometimes the bear eats you. Well, all right. So, when I go to put it back on, I need to remember I gotta take these back fenders off as well, and the bars as well. So nothing's ever as easy as you think it's gonna be, right? fuel line, oil line, we're good. Off she goes. Alright, so there we go, guys. There's the tank off. That lets us get at least to have a little peek. Yeah, I guess you guys deserve it, huh? You've been hanging with me this long. Can have a little peek inside that cylinder. And see what kind of damage we got going on here. Wow, huh? 30 years. 30 years, yeah. A little over 30 years, I guess, of dust and grime and everything else. Grease, dirt. Adds up. So there you go. Next time, like I say, when I go to, before it all goes back together, I'll check everything out. Here's that piece I was talking about. Take you off the stand for a sec. So that's the piece right there at the front of the tank. This one was okay. I was able to get it unscrewed. Fortunately, the front I couldn't. So what we'll end up doing is trying to figure out, as you can see like I was saying, how that nut will end up just turning in that plastic, and that's exactly what it did. Basically, that bolt got bound up in there, and it just wasn't coming out, and it would just turn the whole thing. So I guess the question is, how am I going to go about repairing that? Well, it's a great question. I guess I'll get to that when I get to it, but may end up tacking a bolt on the end and running it through. Try not to start that gas tank on fire. Try not to melt that gas tank, but we'll see what I can think of. That's your piston exhaust side, crown. See any problem there? Yep. So there you go, guys. So what I was showing you up in that top side of the piston through the exhaust port was some major scarring and gouge marks in the piston. So I just took the top off, or the head off, just to show you what's going on down there. I really didn't need to take this head off, but I thought, well, I'll give you a little peek, just because I really couldn't give you really the look at the cylinder I wanted. And frankly, I've been around this game enough times and fixed enough motors and pulled enough motors apart on two-strokes to know exactly what I'm looking at here. So let's see if I can give you a little look here. Let's see if I can turn the light on with that. So there you go. So a lot of folks that think, well, I had a lean burn down or a detonation. I didn't actually have any of those things. So when you'll have a look over here, see all those little pit marks at the top? My LED is interfering with my camera. But all those little pit marks, you'll see them over here too. That's from the crank bearing. So what happened is the crank bearing starts to come apart, and those little pieces of bearing migrate their way all the way up to the top of the piston through the transfer ports, and they start raising hell. And if they can't get out the exhaust port, what they do is start banging stuff apart and getting their way down between the piston and the cylinder and just shooting it all to hell. So, you know, you look at this one side of the piston. You know, if you had a lean burn down, your problems would be all over here, you know, at the front part, and that would be the hottest part. I knew that this motor wasn't running lean or anything. It didn't have that problem. It was, however, getting fairly noisy, and I knew something was about to happen to it. It was only going to be a matter of time. Luckily, like I said, I have that motor over there, which is the exact copy of this motor here. So will I fix this motor? Super unlikely. What I'll probably do is I'll port it out. I'll take the jug off, have a look at the jug, see how bad it is. If it's not too bad, which I really doubt, I'm pretty sure it's trashed, it will find its way into the garbage pile. And then I'll part out the ignition and part out the starter, you know, just part out pieces of it. So have a look at the head. You're going to see very similar issues. So you have a look at the head. I'll focus in there for you. You'll see the same thing. You'll see those little wee marks, those little wee pock marks there. Yep, I've seen it many times. Chunks, little pieces from the cage bearing. So, like I say, no big deal. I'm not bothered by it. Here you go, guys. I actually thought I would just add this on for you. I wasn't able to show you just before because it was it's a bit hard to get in the light in there. Like I said, LED's flashing away, but if I give you the right angle, you can see that what's happened is those cage bearings from the crank came apart and made their way up, like I had said, up through the transfer port, and there you go. There's the effects. Basically, once that piston hits bottom dead center, you know, you're kind of on full suction. So, you know, that's where you see the chunks fly up through the transfer port, get in on top of the piston, and then chew their way up and just rip the rings to pieces. And as you can see, there's little grooves and the scarring on that on the leading edge, on that top edge of that transfer port. That's as a result of that. So yeah, you know, I was going to say that jug is, you know, I could probably file that jug and maybe somebody would be able to use it. Maybe even I'd be able to use it. It's hard to say. Fairly doubtful though. You know, you start, who knows, you know, I might actually just throw it all back together, put a new bearing on that crank and use this motor for a go-kart. Yeah. And then if it ever does fly apart again, it doesn't take so much work to pull the thing out. Anyway, that is officially the end, okay? Okay, guys, good night, and have a good Monday night, and good luck to all of you.
And heat with gel, make you sleep all in your clothes, lay down in your clothes. Hey, baby, I said, can